Honorable Muhia announced the dilemma of his relative's child here, I'm sure it's on the Hansard, who had been refused entry to a school in Uganda and was asked to pay fees or whatever. And I volunteered to go and look into this matter. First of all, the relative never turned up. Secondly, I actually went further to the Ministry of Education to find out what is it that would limit a Kenyan child, primary school going child, even secondary, from going to any school in the country. Nothing. No one knows. I'm sure my minister is here. He can, you know, if what I'm saying is not true, you can contradict me. There is no policy. There is no. They even asked me what is the school, so that they can know whether I'm right or wrong. I went to the Commissioner of Education, both of them, primary and secondary. They both denied it. So some of these things are very difficult. And I would still be interested in following up this. Honestly. And really, there should not be any excuse why an East African child cannot go to any school. For the public schools in Uganda, it's free education. But I have not heard, and I'm sure there are East Africans living here, a number of South Sudanese, some of them are still with their children, their families in Uganda. I don't know whether the children are not going to these schools or whether they are stopped because they happen to be coming from here or there. I'm not aware, and I have failed to prove it. So I would like to be helped by details, and I'm not trying to be defensive, but I would like to help in the spirit of being East African. Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity. I support you, Honorable Kimugai.
Honorable Aden wants you to...
Yes, sure.
Yes.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Because my colleague, Honorable Wanjiko, has stepped out, I'm familiar with the situation of her relative. The issue is not which school the child can attend. The issue is that on one of the occasions when they wanted to travel back to Nairobi with their child in hand, the couple who themselves have, the brother has a work permit and lives legally in Kampala, were asked to bring or provide the student pass for that child. But the school where this child is going to is an ordinary school. It's not an international school. Apparently, it's only the international schools that issue the student pass. And for that reason, they were forced to go back into Kampala, drop the child with a relative, because the child could now not travel out, and fly out the two of them because it was an emergency. So the problem is not which school the child can choose to go to, but there's a problem of something that's called a student pass for the child of the parent who is legitimately holding a work permit in the country. That is the issue. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Honorable Mayor.
Yeah, I thank you, Honorable Abdulkadir, for this further information and clarification, and I promise to follow up again.
That is if you are lucky to meet the relative.
That is if I'm lucky to meet the relative. But I'm going to follow up with the Honorable Muhia about the relative. And I'm sure fellow Ugandans also would be interested in helping, because to us it is quite strange. But now you have raised the issue of a student pass. So let's follow up on that. And I must identify with the spirit of making sure that East Africans can live in our countries without any hassles and enjoy the rights of being East Africans. This is why we did this community, we put this community in place. It so happened, Mr. Speaker, when the community was being re-established, I happened to be in the government of Uganda, and I remember from time to time I used to represent my ministry into the negotiations and the details. And I'm so happy now to be part of it as a legislator here. And I would like to see that spirit that re-established it, the spirit of our leaders who want to see us as being one. And we are part of that leadership, so we must fight for it. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Mary. Honorable Rose.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute on this resolution. First of all, I would like to take this opportunity as well to thank Honorable Kim Gai Ruot for bringing up this resolution at this point in time. I want to concur with all those members who have spoken in support of this resolution. Right Honorable Speaker, mine is just going to be a short one. As a parliament that has the responsibility and obligation to do its oversight role on matters regarding the legal frameworks that have already been passed by this parliament and others, I would like at this point in time to request the Council of Ministers really to provide us with a written brief, provide this House with a written brief on issues to do with the East African Customs Union, the Common Market Protocol, how far we are, in fact, by member state, how far each member has gone in the implementation of these protocols. Why the provisions of these protocols, some of them have not yet been implemented by some member states. And also to give us an update on the Republic of South Sudan. The Republic of South Sudan is the latest state to join the East African Community. And I'm aware there were processes that were being done to fast-track South Sudan into the East African Community to bring them to the same level with other member states. So if we could also benefit from Council on how far we have gone on that, so that when we speak on these matters, when we as an oversight body decide to move on these matters like this one, we are fully informed by Council of how far each state has gone with this matter. Then also, together with that, as Honorable Mary has said, you know, this assembly passes laws, and these laws are meant to be implemented or domesticated by our member states. And in the process of domestication, the member state laws where there is a contravention need to be amended. So maybe they could also give us compile by state how far each state has gone with domestication of the laws that this assembly has passed, which are applicable to all of us here as East Africans. Then there we shall be able to really be updated and therefore at any point in time be able to follow up. Because, Right Honorable Speaker, the challenges are many. When we look at the implementation of the Common Market Protocol, of the Customs Union, I'm still wondering why up to today I have to pay an international fare when I'm traveling from Entebbe to Arusha. The fares we pay are international, and yet this is one member state, and therefore we should be paying what they call domestic fares. So what are the issues? What are the challenges? So those are some of the issues we would really like to be addressed, Right Honourable Speaker. I thank you, and once more I support this resolution, and thank Honourable Kim Gai wrote in our language means king, yeah, for bringing up this resolution. Thank you, Right Honourable Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Rose. The microphone is still on. Okay, so Honourable Kasamba.
Thank you very much, Right Honourable Speaker. I want to thank my brother, Honourable Kim Gai, for giving us a very good motion, which gives us a reflection as East Africans, that are we sincere to ourselves? Are we fair to the East Africans? Are we truthful? Right Honourable Speaker, this region called East Africa, before 1886, had no borders. The colonial masters came. They sat in Berlin in the Anglo-German agreement, the Berlin Conference. They apportioned us. Tanzania went to German. Kenya became, because of its highlands, became a protectorate under the Kenyan settler economy. Uganda was given to a company called the East African Imperial British Company to take interest of the British. That was 122 years back. But they realized in 1897 that they had to put an infrastructure which would connect Mombasa port to Kampala. So they established the East African Railway, the Kenya-Uganda Railway, between 1897 and 1901. They even went ahead to establish the Customs Collection Center in 1900. They went ahead and established the East African Currency Board in 1905. They even continued because they saw that the region was so big, they could not protect their interests within the small entities they had created. So they went ahead to establish so many East African institutions, the East African Harbours, the East African Airways. They went even to the East African Currency Board. And then they even put in place the East African Governors Conference in 1926, whereby they would sit together to enjoy and share the experiences on how they can govern us. It is painful that after saying that colonialism is out of the way, the heads of state of the partner states in 1961 had envisaged to establish a federal status by 1963. It collapsed in 1977. And we appreciate that it was re-established way back in the 1990s and the 1999 2000.
Honorable Dr. Makame.
Mr. Speaker, the heads of state of East African community, or the countries that pioneered the East African community, the independence of Tanganyika was 61. The independence of Kenya was 63. So in 1961, Mr. Speaker, we had no heads of state of East African community or the partner states, with the exception of Tanzania. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
So, Honorable Dr. Makame, that is information. It is not a point of order. And I hope members are not raising on a point of order to circumvent my decisions. Because, see, when it is a point of order, I am obliged to listen. When it is a point of information, it is a member on the floor to allow it. So I just want to believe that no member wants to coerce me into accepting a situation by leading me into a wrong way. So that is an information, and I believe he appreciates it, yes, yes. But there is nothing out of order in what he said.
Thank you very much, Right Honourable, for the very wise ruling. I just mentioned that in 1961, when Tanganyika, or the United Republic of Tanzania, became independent, the journey for the East African Federation was envisaged by the founding fathers of Julius Nyerere, then 1963 of 62 of Uganda, Milton Obote, and also in 1963 the late Jomo Kenyatta. So the journey was really formed based on the basis of the historical colonial masters, which they had envisaged that this region could not be managed in the smaller entities. So in that spirit, I want to appeal and I want to bring out the reality that much as we put in place so many hardware and legalistic papers which say that we are together, but the truth is the fear is still engrossing most of us. My brother, the chair council, comes from a border community, from Tororo, Busia. But it is very cardinal and it is very practical that there is no Ugandan, no Ugandans are working beyond the Busia border on the Kenyan side. There are no kiosks. There are not as many Ugandans working in Kenya across the border, other than bringing the maize and you stop at the border point and it is taken over by the Kenyans. This is the reality. Even to access health services across Kenya. This one we've interrogated. He's bleeding. Leave alone the cultural semantics they put across that we are together. But when it comes to economic integration, there are no jobs of Ugandans across up to Bungoma. Time has come, Right Honourable Speaker, for us to cross-check what we call the rate of residence of East Africans in the partner states. To cross-check the rate of investments of East Africans amongst the partner states. The reality is we are still so much fearful of each other. I have a living testimony. I live in the border with Tanzania. Nobody can dispute it. Most of our people lose animals. They cross to Tanzania. They ask you, "Eh bwana, unatafuta nyama ama ng'ombe? Unatafuta nini?" Just 2 years, 3 years back, I want to tell you, all the people of Ugandan origin, Tanzanian, I mean of Rwandan origin, who are living in the Bukoba area, who had established, who had even married Tanzanians, were chased and they were camped in my community in Kakuto until they've been resettled in Ichenjojo, given piece of land to look for how they can continue to survive. Some of them had even married Tanzanians. But because they were traced that you are Ugandan origin, they were chased. This is the reality. Mr. Speaker, it is time for us as Parliament of East Africa to request the CTC, together with the Council of Ministers, to check for us all the laws which needs to be harmonized, which call upon to effectively implement the Common Market Protocol. The immigration laws, which are at variance within the partner states, the phytosanitary standards laws, in as far as commodities like agricultural commodities have to be transferred across the border, the environmental laws. These are the laws we need to capture so that in the next 2 or 6 months, we are able to inform the various speakers forum of which you eminently participate in, and we request the national parliaments, the legislative arms of governments within the partner state to harmonize Otherwise, the officers who are day to day manning the exit and entries of these partner states will continue to apply those laws, because for them they are given, they are still statutes within the various sovereign states' laws. So I request that we undertake this exercise to make sure that we look at all the laws which are not at the tandem within the provisions of the Common Market Protocol, so that we are able to make sure that we harmonize them, and we give ourselves a timeline that maybe in 1 year these laws should be executed within among all the partner states, so that we are able to have harmonized even the visa laws. The visa provisions are still there. So you find that those execution officers will continue to demand visa requirements as long as they are still on the statutes of the sovereign states. The only jointly captured common provisions is under the TRA, URA, KRA, RRA, SRA, and Burundi revenue authorities. We can comfortably talk of revenue officials in Mombasa, because we are collecting, every partner state wants to get the honey of entries. Time has come for us to have joint immigration officers, Ugandan immigration officers sitting in capitals, monitoring the immigration laws within the partner states, so that we have a joint, under the joint sectoral councils. Let us not stop it at just coming here in Arusha to sit together. We must begin to have execution officers within the 6 partner states sitting together and monitoring on a daily basis the provisions of the integration and how we can smoothen the various sector agencies to make sure that we execute laws which help the people of East Africa to move together, to have the single destiny, and to make sure that we travel as a single destiny within the region. As I conclude, Right Honourable Speaker, let us, as members of the East African Legislative Assembly, begin to, on a monthly, quarterly basis, undertake awareness campaigns. Let us get out of our usual ways of doing business. Wherever we go back to our capitals, let us slot time, address the medias, go to public institutions like schools, address business councils, farmers, civil society organizations, so that we are able to bring closer the destiny of the integration by deepening and informing the people who are yearning to make sure that we have the integration a reality. Clearly, we need to clear the backlog. The backlog is quite big, and I think I am one of those who is reconsidering that why do we make new laws when even those we make are not assented to, are not executed. Let us make sure that we put in place a strategy which makes sure that we harmonize all the laws, we clear the backlogs, and we make sure that the laws which are not assented to by the heads of, by the summit leaders, we review them if there are provisions for review. Because we are going to make so many laws and they will be hanging, and we shall assume that we've counted so many laws we've made without any meaningful impact in as far as implementation and transforming the livelihood of the people of East Africa. I support the motion. People of East Africa are yearning. The more people move, the more volumes, the more earnings we get across the borders, the more volumes of people, and the more enjoyment of the livelihood of the people. I rest my case by supporting the motion. Thank you so much, Right Honourable Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Kasamba. Honourable Susan, Honourable George, Honourable Namara. I will pick another order after.
Thank you very much, Right Honourable Speaker, for allowing us sufficient time to debate this motion, as it's one of those motions that directly touch the lives of the East African people. Right Honourable Speaker, according to our statute books, the free movement of people in East Africa is guaranteed by the Common Market Protocol. I'm using my words carefully, it's according to our statute books. When we get away from the statute books, it's a different story altogether. The Common Market Protocol came into force on 1st July 2010. It's now 8 years down the road. And I'm surprised that the free movement of East Africans is still a contentious issue. Honorable Speaker, when you look at Article 4, briefly, of the Common Market Protocol, spells out the objectives of the Common Market Protocol. I'll just read out one of the objectives, which is under Article 4, Clause 2A. It says the specific objectives of the common market are to accelerate economic growth and development of the partner states through the attainment of free movement of goods, persons, and labor, the rights of establishment and residence, and the free movement of services and capital. Still under Article 3, I'll also just read a little bit of Article 3 of the Common Market Protocol. 3, Clause 2A, it provides that without prejudice to paragraph 1, the partner states undertake to observe the principle of non-discrimination of nationals of other partner states on grounds of nationality. Right, Honorable Speaker, I'm really wondering if the partner states are recognizing the principle or the protocol which they all assented to. And therein is a principle of non-discrimination. Is it true that East Africans are not being discriminated against within the East African region? And the answer is no. Honorable Speaker, that leaves me with a question. Is the free movement of people, free movement of capital, free movement of services, a right to residence and establishment, are they a reality or a fallacy? And my conclusion is, it's a fallacy 100%. Right, Honorable Speaker, this is not the first time we've had such a motion on the floor of the House. I remember very well, during the third assembly, I think it was in 2013, we had this kind of motion on the floor when we were in Kigali. And I remember vividly, I'm going to say the names because I know this is on the answer can bail me out. One of the council members, Honorable Abdallah Sadala, rose. It was about the issue of the work permit fees. He said to the assembly that I will tell you, take it or leave it, the United Republic of Tanzania is not going to remove work permit fees because we don't want to lose revenue. This is on the answered. And that time, the United Republic of Tanzania was charging $2,000 for a work permit for any East African, right, Honorable Speaker. I also recall in 2015, we had a petition as an assembly from the East African Employers Organization and the East African Trade Unions Confederation. They petitioned Eala in removing all the barriers when it comes to free movement of persons within the region. Honorable Speaker, allow me to add my voice to thank the mover of this motion, Honorable Kim Gai. He put a case for the Republic of South Sudan. But allow me also to side with my colleague, Honorable Aden, when he used some equitable maxims. I'll also quote an equitable maxim, that he who seeks equity must do equity. And also, he who comes to equity must come with clean hands. Now, our brothers from South Sudan are new kids on the block. Very good. But now, as you come on the block, what do you come with? Honorable Speaker, recently we were in Juba as a joint committee on the Interparliamentary Games. And among the requests we are making to government for hosting the Interparliamentary Games was a waiver visa. And then our colleagues, members of parliament, were even shocked that an EAC partner state would request a visa from an EAC citizen. And here we were requesting for a favor from government, despite the fact that Article 7, 2A of the Common Market Protocol prohibits visas from EAC citizens. And this is unfortunate. The good thing which gave us hope is that the Speaker committed to liaise with the Minister of Internal Affairs to do the waiver. But it's my plea through Council of Ministers that by 30th November, when we have to go for the Interparliamentary Games, no East African would be required of a visa. Not just a waiver, but total abolition of those visas. Honorable members, truth be told, our border communities have gone far ahead of us. They have gone ahead of our technocrats. They have gone ahead of council. They have even gone ahead of this assembly. They cross the borders freely. They know how to do it. I remember when we went to do these on-spot assessments of one-stop border posts. They showed us that people, when they are going to the market, they come to the one-stop border post and they are given a pass to go to the market. And I was saying, what a shame. Border communities need a pass even to cross and go to a market, which is just a few yards away. It was very embarrassing. But also, I was happy that our East Africans are very sharp, because the border officials told us the challenge they face, that these people don't come to use the border points. They use their panya routes and go to the market, and it's problem solved. Won't we get ashamed when we go to arrest them that they're using these panya routes when you've caused the situation? Shame upon us. It's the time right now to take action so that we are counted that something tangible is being done. Honorable Speaker, it is still embarrassing that even in our partner states, to get a passport, you have to be very patient to get just a passport. It will take you more than a month to get one. Even a national ID, it will take unreasonably long to get one. But our people want to move, so they have to use other means. Why not go through a panya route where you don't need a passport or an ID or a visa? So please, let's not push our people to the wall. Honorable Speaker, today we have so many issues going around. We have work permits for East Africans. Not only work permits, but also work permit fees. We have residence permits. We also have residence permit fees. We have visas. We have also visa fees. Now, really, are we working? Is the East African community having an impact? When you go back to talk to the Wananchi, what message do we have to take to them? What achievements can they benefit if even the Common Market Protocol has not been respected? Then we'd better all sit home, let council go, enjoy SC in their offices, and we call it quits. Because this is the basic that we are supposed to give the people of East Africa. As we talk about harmonization of these fees, today I had somebody giving me good news that United Republic of Tanzania reduced the work permits fees to 1,000. And for me, it's not worth clapping at all. Why would you charge an East African $1,000 to go and find a job? Why would you? And also, Honorable Speaker, I understand, for example, the three partner states, Uganda, Rwanda and Kenya that removed work permit fees for their citizens. Their citizens are enjoying. But for partner states that did not remove, it's the citizens who are suffering, not the governments. Because, I mean, it has to be on a reciprocal basis. So we are forcing our people to suffer because of lack of action or inaction of our technocrats. Honorable Speaker, as I summarize, I'm really saddened that even the current common market protocol still have some lacunas that need to be addressed. And that will take me to my proposal on the amendment to the motion. Right, Honorable Speaker, when you look at the common market protocol and its annexes, you realize that this protocol was not made for every East African. It was made for a few. When you look at the East African Community Common Market Free Movement of Workers regulations, you'll find that the movement that is allowed in the protocol is for the highly skilled workers. When you look at that annex, it's Annex 2, look at the Regulation 15, it will give you the schedule for the free movement of workers. The people targeted are the managers for every partner state. I'm talking about all the 5 initial partner states. They are all included here. They want managers, they want CEOs, doctors, lawyers, engineers. Those are the people we are addressing here. But we are leaving out the biggest population in the region of the youth, because they have not yet attained that capacity that is required to enjoy the fruits of the common market protocol. And I find this very unfortunate, and I'm requesting that Council reconsiders their position when it comes to this protocol and amend to make it an inclusive protocol for each and every East African. Right, Honorable Speaker, there is also another issue which is a lacuna, and that is the retention of the work permits. It's the work permit itself, which is well stipulated under Regulation 6 of these same regulations on free movement of workers. Honorable Speaker, today we are all praising the partner states that have removed the work permit fees. But to my disappointment, we've given with one hand and taken away with the other hand. And to this I say, shame. Honorable Speaker, this applies to the 3 partner states that do not require the work permit fees. But just on the principle of work permits, you wonder why would they even have to be there? If we are saying let our people move freely and work, we shouldn't take them through this rigorous process. Because first of all, when you look at the protocol, the Annex 2, the government official has a right to deny you that work permit. So it's not automatic that you're going to get it. This is the law, they can deny it to you, and you just go and sort yourself. Recently, when we visited Mombasa Port, we found employees of Uganda Revenue Authority. They had been transferred to Mombasa 6 months before. They got into Kenya, they applied for work permits, and they had not received the work permits 6 months later. And these are government officials there to execute their mandate of collecting revenue, because taxes are collected at the entry point. But they didn't have work permits, and it took that long. Honorable Speaker, there are also conditions that are attached to these work permits. And I'll go by partner states. For example, when you go to the Republic of Rwanda, they will not charge you work permit fees. They will give you a free work permit. But the immigration law, number 19 of 2011, has this to say. In the case of a worker who falls in the category of skilled workers who are sponsored, the employer has to prove that there is no Rwandese possessing such skills to do that job. To me, you've given me, but you've also taken away. Because as East Africans, we have the same kind of education and whatnot. There is no job that a Ugandan can do that a Rwandese cannot do. There is no job a Ugandan can do and a Kenyan cannot do. That's just one example. Let's go to Kenya. I'm saying this because I know council can take on these issues and address them. Even as members of Eala, I know we have very proactive members. We can go and engage with our authorities and cause some change. When you go to Kenya, the Kenya Citizenship and Immigration Regulation Laws of 2012, number one, they restrict issuance of a work permit to a person less than 35 years. That means many members of this assembly, including myself, you cannot get a work permit from Kenya because you're not 35. Very many. Honorable Jean Claude here, Honorable Fancy, Honorable Pamela, so many. To mention but a few, they will not qualify. That's number one. And remember that population category, they constitute over 70% in the region. Number two, you must be assured of an income of not less than $24,000. $24,000 per annum, which makes it $2,000 per month. So you must be at that level where you can earn such. So if you're in the category who earns $1,900 a month, which many of our middle-income people do not even earn, then you don't qualify to get a work permit in Kenya. So can I brag that the work permit is free? Also, the other principle is your employer who is inviting you to work in Kenya must prove that that job you're going to do cannot be done by any other Kenyan. You know Kenyans are smart and how aggressive they can be when it comes to these jobs. Well, if you want to see who Kenyans are, attend any of these interview panels when their jobs are applied for. You will see what I'm talking about. So that means you cannot just go and qualify for work permit because there will definitely be a Kenyan who can do that job, even if it means a rocket scientist. They have them. Now, are we really helping East Africans? Can we celebrate? And also, if you're going to move from one job to another, even when you have the work permits and you have all the other qualifications, your previous employer must give you an approval letter that they are allowing you to go and work for another company. Do you think that is very easy to get such a letter? It's not. Go to my dear motherland, Uganda. They have managed to remove all those things, including capacity for Ugandans to do those jobs. And that's why actually all jobs in hotels, they are done by the Kenyans because of the excellent customer service that they have. But also to get a work permit, you must be very patient. You have to wait endlessly. But why would we get to this? Council of Ministers, on this I'm requesting you to prove that Council is not sleeping, Council is busy working, by giving us results on this and reporting back to the Assembly. Right Honourable Speaker, just two more issues before I wind up. Another challenge that I've encountered is a lacuna in the Common Market Protocol is when it comes to students. We have a provision under Regulation 7 on the East African Community Common Market Free Movement of Persons regulations. Students are too many across the region. We move back and forth. But Regulation 7.1 says this: a citizen who is issued with a pass under the regulations, that's a student's pass, shall not undertake any employment in a territory of the host partner state, except where the citizen is a student on internship or industrial training. Right Honourable Speaker, you realize that many students in our region pay their own tuition. And world over, students are allowed to work as they study in order to supplement their income or their tuition fees. I know our council members and our top technocrats, many of them have had an opportunity to study abroad. They work and make a living. Now, why is it that for us we can't copy at least the best practice elsewhere? In other regional blocks, it's allowed for a student to work and make an extra living. In conclusion, Right Honourable Speaker, I would like to propose an amendment that we recommend to Council of Ministers to amend the Common Market Protocol and its annexes to treat all East Africans equally across board and address those gaps. The protocol should not be made for a few, but for all East Africans. I beg to support.
Thank you, Honourable Susan. You will draft your proposed amendment. Honourable George, then Honourable Mariam. Yes, Honourable Namara. George, Honourable Namara, Mariam, Dr. Woda, Dr. Magembe.
Right Honourable Speaker, first of all, I would like to thank the Honourable Kim Gai for introducing this motion. We have been here since December last year, and I must say that this is one of the most profound motions that we are debating today. Honourable Kim Gai, if you remain silent until the end of your term, you have made your contribution. Right Honourable Speaker, yesterday I was gladly informed that partner states have appointed constitutional experts to study and draft a constitution for the federation, political federation of East Africa. What an ambition. And while that is happening, this community is grappling with an identity crisis. I call this an identity crisis because we do not know, are we East Africans? Are we Kenyans? Are we Ugandans? So who are we? And yet there is an ambition that we are going to progress into a political federation. My question is, are we making these laws for East Africans, or are we making these laws to fulfill the ambitions of a certain selected few? If indeed our ambition is to have a political federation, it must have people. In the absence of people, it's just a mirage. And now this motion speaks to the participation of East Africans in the integration agenda. And how I wish that the leaders of the East African community could make it a priority to bring East Africans on board. And there is no better way of bringing East Africans on board than to address the substantive questions that this motion attempts to answer. The EAC Common Market Protocol came into place in 2009. And the EAC Common Market was then assented to by 1st July 2010. We had already signed the Common Market Protocol. It envisages, like my colleagues have said, free movement of people, labor, goods, and services, and capital. And then it also has rights of establishment and residence. Its implementation is guided by certain principles. Principle number 1, non-discrimination of nationals of all partner states. Number 2, equal treatment. Equal treatment of nationals. Number 3, transparency in matters concerning partner states. Number 4, sharing of information on matters of integration. Those are the 4 principles that inform the implementation of the Common Market Protocol. Mr. Speaker, perhaps we have been shadow boxing, but today there seems to be a spirit that is speaking to this House to say, let's be honest and have a real conversation about where we want to take this community. Allow me, Mr. Speaker, to state here that the biggest challenge, we have talked about all the technicalities, the biggest challenge that this community faces is trust. There is a huge trust deficit. And because there's a huge trust deficit, we are also having a credibility crisis. And once you have a trust deficit, any relationship that has breach of trust is a relationship that is bound to have problems. Mr. Speaker, the mutual suspicion, the undertones, the unspoken issues that do not come into the public sphere and yet are the real drivers of decisions in our capitals is the problem we are facing here. And unless this community begins to speak the truth and be honest about where we want to go, we are going to have protocols, we are going to pass legislation, we are going to make amendments. We are coming out with all legalese, but we are not going to realize the necessary traction that we desperately need to have East Africans come together as East African people. So let's address the question of honesty. Let's address the question of trust first. And then we are going to begin to talk about this. My neighbor is as good as being part of my community. That I do not have a Tanzanian, I do not have a Kenyan, I have an East African who resides in Kenya, who resides in Tanzania. So that we are only domiciled in these states, but we are East Africans. Let's address that issue. It is what one time Kasamba said, these are the mental barriers. You see, this software of ours is the one that informs our actions. What we think is what drives our actions. So unless we upgrade our software and accept that now we have rebooted and we now have a new understanding of who we are, this community won't move. No matter how many laws, no matter how many protocols, no matter what amendments we put here. So my recommendation to the Council of Ministers, prioritize the East Africanness of East Africans. Let us get out and let East Africans begin to be East Africans. Let's get them to understand why we are here first as East Africans. I attended a very high-profile, could call it a workshop in Nairobi a month ago when we were in our recess. And I was privileged actually to speak on behalf of the Kenyan minister who didn't turn up for that workshop, and I was asked to open it. But one of the things that came out, it was a meeting that had all media houses in East Africa, the giants that we have here, and also had civil society organizations and donors. And one of the people, when he was talking about the political economy of extractive industry in East Africa, posed a rhetorical question. He said, what would East Africans miss if we shut down ARUSHA? It left me wondering. That was a very powerful statement. It was an indictment on East Africa and the East African community. Because he asked a rhetorical question. He said, what would East Africans miss should we close down ARUSHA? In this case, ARUSHA representing the East African community. He was speaking to the idea of the relevance of the East African community when the East African people themselves are not gaining any dividends of this integration. Indeed, there are indications that we have made progress. And I am always very excited when I listen to some very colorful statistics that show that we have made significant progress. I would want to relate with some of those statistics because I am a very optimistic person. For example, they will tell you that in the last, between January to May of this year, Uganda has done very well in its trade with Kenya. The trade between Uganda and Kenya has registered about 30 million US dollars export. And the imports from Kenya is about 26 million US dollars. Meaning that we have for the first time overtaken the imbalance, the trade imbalance that existed between Kenya and Uganda. And those are all fruits of trade. However, during the same period, maize that was in surplus in Uganda could not cross the border. And the reason was, you know, this maize does not meet the standards, the specifications of the market. And it is the duty of the state of Kenya to protect its citizens from all sorts of, including aflatoxin and all that. The most interesting thing is that the trucks would cross from Kenya and go and pick this very maize and go back to Kenya. I wondered whether those trucks have a system in them to cleanse this maize automatically. So this maize is only good in the Kenyan trucks. It is not good in the Ugandan trucks. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't simply work like that. We are casualties of misinformation, of dishonesty from the people who should be the key drivers of this integration. And it is the right time, and I'm happy that this assembly is actually having a conversation about this. That we should not be here. Actually, how I wish everything else could go slow, but East Africans could just walk into Kenya, carry their goods, go to Tanzania, sell their, you know, whatever little they have. You know, Ugandans are moving from there, go to Sudan, Sudanese can go to Burundi, you know. Life would be good for us East Africans. I will tell you something.
South Sudan, I've been told. Not Sudan.
We are so excited about foreign investors. We are so excited about foreign markets. There's a huge market here. There's a huge market here. Myself and Honorable Kasamba yesterday were casually talking about a piece of pineapple in Arusha costs 2,000, about 3,000 T shillings, Tanzanian shillings. I would bring that same piece of pineapple, moreover of a very high quality Ugandan pineapple, very sweet. And it would go here for 1,500, and I would still go home smiling. Do you know how that would enhance the livelihoods of the people here? First, it is cheap. Secondly, it's of high value. But because we think that our Tanzanian-ness is more important than our East African-ness, yet we are closed in this mirage called East Africa. We must begin to have an introspection. We must begin to speak with ourselves, whether we are being honest and whether we are just integrating in our capitals, whether the real, progress that we are talking about as East African community is about the laws that we pass or the experience that East Africans have belonging to this community. I think they